The Ioniq 6 is Hyundai's mid-size all-electric vehicle. It is the second all-electric vehicle Hyundai has produced on the Ioniq platform. You also have the Ioniq 5, but this week we've been driving this one, and although the automotive industry seems to not know what to do with electric vehicles, are Americans buying them? Are they not? Hyundai has produced some of the best on the market. Let's check it out. So the Ioniq 6 is offered in 3 trim levels. You have the SE, the SEL, and the Limited. We're driving the Limited. You can get it in a rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, which is a dual motor versus single motor. We'll talk more about that as we talk about the electric platform. But let's go ahead and jump into the exterior design and see what we think about it. All right, let's start off with the color here. This is called Transmission Blue. It is a very grayish blue color, really kind of matches the hazy gray sky today. And with its black accents, I think it looks really good in this color. There are a ton of different design elements throughout this vehicle. You have the little bit bubbly front with the hood bubbling over with the headlights. You have the very pixelated headlights and taillights. These are full LED headlights with projector beams, a really distinctive look here. The front grille has active shutters, which obviously helps with aerodynamics. You also have flush door handles that will power open as you get close to the vehicle with the key in your pocket. You also have a touch sensitive area where you can lock and unlock it as well. Our side mirrors are also power folding side mirrors with integrated turn signals. Our wheels here on the Limited trim are 20-inch alloy wheels, and they definitely sacrifice a little bit of aerodynamics for a little bit of style. The side profile really brings the fastback look into play. This is considered a fastback vehicle, even though it's a trunk and not a hatch, which we'll take a look at here in just a sec. But you do have the curved belt line. You have the big duck wing spoiler here that reminds me, and I did have a few people tell me it reminds them of a 911 spoiler. The charging port is on the passenger rear side in the US standard, of course. Moving around the rear, you can see the pixelated tail lights. Even up on that wing, you have some pixelated brake lights that look really cool here. You have the Hyundai badge on the top of the trunk, and then the Ioniq 6 badge down below. And then the rear fascia is definitely a very sporty look with lots of aerodynamic bits. And quite frankly, after seeing and driving the Ioniq 5, I really love that retro style, the hatchback style. Coming into the Ioniq 6, when I saw it on paper, on the internet, I didn't quite like the design that much. Even still, when I look at pictures on the internet, the styling looks a bit weird to me, but in person, I think it looks fantastic. It's a little bit of that rounded belt line that gets me, but again, in person, I think it looks a lot better than it does on pictures on the internet. And after having this thing in my driveway and driving it around for a week, I definitely like the design. But let's talk about the overall size. And looking at the size of this vehicle, again, looking at pictures online, I kind of assumed it was the same size as like the Elantra, but it's not. It's closer in size to the Sonata. It is a lot larger of a sedan than I originally gave it credit for. Your full wheelbase is 116.1 inches. The length is 191.1 inches. The width is 74 inches. The height is 58.9 inches. You have a 5.6 inch ground clearance, and your full coefficient of drag is 0.22, which is really good. You also do have the parking feature. You can remote start this thing. And then with buttons on the side of the remote, you can pull it back or pull it forward. Which is cool, but I've always said is more of a gimmick for the most part. I don't really see people using this. I've never used it in a real life situation. just kind of showing off that it is a feature that's available. But it does work pretty well. And if you have tighter parking, this could help. I do quickly want to talk about the noise that this makes. Obviously a synthetic noise from the car, not from the motors or the battery or anything. At low speeds, you'll hear this even inside the car pretty loud, and it's for warning pedestrians that an electric vehicle is close. Obviously, it's regulated in the EU, but not here in the US, but Hyundai still has it on their vehicles here. And I'm iffy on it. I would rather it just be quiet, but I understand the safety needs of warning pedestrians that an EV is rolling up on them. And with that, let's go ahead and pop the trunk. Again, it is just a trunk. It's classified as a fastback, which to me means it's like a hatch that opens even the back glass, but it is a very swoopy design, and you get a decent sized trunk here. You can pop it with the button on the trunk. Obviously a button on the key fob, a button inside, but you also have the hands-free lift where you can walk to the back and it will beep and then pop for you with your key in the pocket. You do have 11.2 cubic feet of cargo space, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to things like the Sonata, but quite frankly, you do have plenty of room in here for almost anything you want to carry. Suitcases, golf clubs, camera gear, groceries, all are going to fit just fine in here. And of course, you got a little area here for your charging cord to reside. You've got little pull handles to drop the rear seats, and you do have a button here on the trunk lid to close and lock the entire car, which is always a nice feature. But with that, this is usually where we go and pop the hood and check out what the engine is in the vehicle. Of course, this is all electric, so let's talk about the electric platform and what we're rocking with here. And first off, you can pop the hood. There is the smallest amount of frunk space up here. I guess you could throw some tools, or not sure exactly what you would want to carry up here, but if you needed to, it's available. But when it comes to the motors, again, this is the dual motor setup. It is the limited trim. Depending on the motors that you get, the trim that you get is going to depend a lot on the exact power numbers that you get, the exact charging that you get, the range that you get. And again, it's also going to depend on the two-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive. This is the dual motor setup. You got 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of instant torque, which is amazing. We have a battery preheating system, and it is DC ultra fast charging capable. The rear-wheel drive option has 225 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, which is still nothing to sneeze at on a vehicle like this. I haven't driven that, but I would like to. But I can go ahead and tell you that this thing is quick, and we'll talk more about that as we drive. And then charging and range numbers I'll put up on the screen for you guys, because it's a lot. But with that, I think it's time to jump inside and start looking at the interior, starting with the rear seats, because again, it's a surprising amount of space. All right, I definitely wanted to start this interior off in the back seats because they really surprised me. Again, whenever I first saw this vehicle, I didn't really pay attention to the dimensions of it. I assumed it was the size of kind of the Elantra style of vehicle, but it's much closer to the Sonata, and I've owned a Sonata before, and I can still tell you that the interior volume here is much better than the Sonata. This is pushed back because it pulls back to let the driver out when you kick the vehicle off. That's not my driving position. This is closer to the driving position, and there's just a ton of knee room, foot room. Headroom is a little bit tighter. I'm 6'1", bigger guy, but I can still fit fine. It's just a little bit tight on the headroom. Your total passenger volume is 103 cubic feet, and your total interior volume is 114.2 cubic feet. So again, it has a really big interior, really great use of space. I did have the kids 3 wide back here for a trip to the movies that we did, It is a flat floor, so it's easy for everybody to sit comfortably, even 3 wide. You've got 2 USB Type-C charging ports back here. You've got your own AC vents back here. You've got pockets for different things in the doors. You have a pull-down armrest with cup holders. And again, it's just a decent amount of space. I could definitely see this being the go-to Uber vehicle over the Model 3. If you're an Uber and you want an all-electric sedan that will get people places in comfort, this is pretty good. With that, I think it's time to jump in the front seat, into the driver's seat, check out the tech and the rest of the interior, and then we'll take it for a drive. All right, we're in the driver's seat now, and again, it's gonna move up to get me into position even before I kick it on. But this interior is a black on black interior. We do have the H-Tex Trimmed seating. So it's not real leather, but it's kind of a faux leather that looks really good. Let me pick you up and show you around. Again, a better look at these seats. Nice headrest. You've got this little pixelated design here, perforated, black stitching, really comfortable seats, nice bolstering. The door panel has this wavy pattern in it, and at night when the lights are on, you do get a glow from inside this little door handle that accents this striped pattern on the doors. You have your big speaker for your Bose premium audio system. A bit of an oddly designed dash here, and that rib design coming through right here on this material. And then of course you see this big panoramic screen for the driver and the driver information. Let's kick it on and take a look. And immediately you'll see it's 2 separate screens. Both are 12.3 inches. This one is a touch screen. This one obviously has no reason to be. And we've got Hyundai's infotainment system with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, built-in navigation. And I quite like their infotainment system. It's nice and snappy. Everything's pretty easy to figure out and set up. And there is a ton to go through and set up with this thing. You can see that you do have your heated seats, heated steering wheel button here. That's all hidden in the screen. There are no physical buttons down here. So below that screen is all your AC and heat controls, a couple of physical media buttons, your volume knob, things like that, and your push button start. But again, if I had one gripe on this, there's not a physical heated seat button. You do have to dive into the infotainment screen. Below that, you do have a wireless phone charger, so you can throw your phone down there and start wirelessly charging. While you have USB Type-C in the back, the interface for the infotainment system is USB Type-A. So if you're running USB Type-C cords, you'll have to have some kind of adapter. This works just fine, and we do have Apple CarPlay, so that's all good. Back further are your cup holders. Your door lock buttons are back here. Your window switches are here. You have an auto hold button and a button for the window locking. So this is kind of an odd place for anything except for like a Jeep where you're taking the doors off to have your window switches and things like that, but they are not on the doors. I don't know if that's just for a clean aesthetic or what, but you do have that all right here. There's a little drop cubby right here, and then your armrest, which is a bit padded, not too padded, and a decent size cubby right here. And if you can see down in there, we do have 2 USB Type-C charging ports if you need a charge, but again, for interfacing, you have to have that USB Type-A. You can go ahead and take a look at the pedals real quick. They are the aluminum pedals. This is on the limited trim. And then the steering wheel, which first thing you might notice is there's no Hyundai symbol here, but we have these 4 lights. As you're charging, these will kind of indicate the charge level, but while it's on, it just indicates that it's on. You have kind of the standard array of buttons for your steering wheel, including cruise control settings and interfacing with the driver information display, and your audio and infotainment buttons. And then we have a drive mode button right here, which looks like it could be a turning wheel, but it is not. It is just a button. You can see as we change them, you get indications on the steering wheel. You also get indications on the driver information display. So we've got an eco, a normal, and a sport mode. If you hold it down, you get the snow mode, and we'll check out a little bit of those as we drive it. But as you see, you've got a nice big screen for your driver information display. It is a bit cut off on the top of the screen from my actual seating position, so I have to like duck down a little bit if you want to see any of the information at the top, but it's not a terrible thing. You do have a few different screens you can thumb through here depending on what you're wanting to look at. And again, when you put it in different modes, you get a bit different of a look. You can see your battery percentage down here, the mode that you're in, the miles that you have left to go. You can pack this thing full of information, but in my opinion, the cleaner the better. You also do have paddle shifters on either side here. And of course, this has a single speed transmission, so you're not actually switching gears with this. This actually sets your amount of regenerative braking. And this is also indicated in a graphic right here. So as you go up, you can see it going up. And as you pull back, you can see it going down. So if you want to adjust your regenerative braking on the fly, you can do that with the paddle shifters on the steering wheel. One other feature that is becoming very common in Hyundai vehicles is the gear shifter here on the steering wheel. There's a button to push in for park. You can go back for reverse, which gives us our full 360 camera and reverse camera. You push it forward for drive. You can go back one for neutral, and again, push in for park. Pretty easy to figure out once you get used to it, but again, it is just another different shifter where it seems like a lot of auto manufacturers are rethinking the shifter when you got shift by wire. Lexus and Toyota has a new shifter. Acura has its own shifter. Obviously, BMW, Mercedes have had different types of shifters for a while. Just something to think about there. Another quick, cool feature to look at when you turn your turn signals on, it does give you the blind spot view on these things right here in your dash, which is nothing new. Hyundai and Kia vehicles have had this for a little while, but it is present here in the Ioniq 6. We also have what Hyundai considers a wide sunroof. I'm not sure what exactly makes it wide. The glass does go from one side to the other, but the hole looks pretty similar to what most sunroofs are. It's not panoramic, so it doesn't go all the way to the back, but it is all power, including the shade, which is cool. With that said, I think that's a good run around the interior. If you've got any other questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them after the fact. But right now it's time to get this thing out on the road, start talking about the drive. All right, so let's put it in drive and take off. And first thing that I'll mention, just like I kind of already talked about, there is a pretty loud, pretty audible noise while you're going in slow speeds. This is a pedestrian safety type thing. So as you're in slow speeds, you can hear that whine. That is not the engine. That is not the batteries doing anything. That's just a speaker making a noise that gets progressively quieter as you get up to speed. You can turn it up quite a bit to be even more noisy, or kind of adjust the noise levels. But if it's me, I want it off as much as possible, and even off doesn't completely turn off the noise, but can turn off most of the noise. So the Ioniq 6 shows it has an EPA estimated range of 361 miles. That is the base SE with rear-wheel drive, not the all-wheel drive dual motor variant. Definitely not this limited trim. This one, as it is the limited with the dual motor, has an estimated 270 mile range, which is still a decent amount. Obviously, hitting that 300 mile range is really important to a lot of people. And if you want that 300 plus mile range, you're going to want to look at the rear-wheel drive. You're going to want to look at the SE or SEL trims. And I'll talk more about what I would recommend when we wrap this thing up. But again, This one, the Limited, 270 miles, and we're sitting at 60% battery with 152-mile range. Not terrible. Like I did mention, you can change the regenerative braking level, so you can pull the pedal on the right-hand side and lower the regenerative braking, or pull it on the left-hand side and it will really start kicking in that regenerative braking. I'm not a huge fan of driving with very heavy regenerative braking. The heaviest here is a little bit heavy, but not terrible. I've definitely been in worse vehicles, worse EVs that had really strong regenerative braking. You can get used to it and get the whole one pedal drive thing going on, but quite frankly, I just am not a huge fan of it. But if you want to eke every mile out of the batteries, the highest regenerative braking is going to be your best option, especially keeping it in eco mode, which we do have it in now. And it does seem like the eco mode keeps it in rear wheel drive only and kind of deactivates the front motor, and that's going to obviously help save battery. But if you're looking more for just a fun time, you do have the sport mode, which immediately leaps into wanting to go fast. You can immediately see that your all-wheel drive is active. You are pushing power out of both motors constantly. The Limited all-wheel drive that we're in here has a 0 to 60 time of 5.1 seconds. Obviously, the other trims are going to be a bit slower depending on exactly what setup that you get, but we have the quick one, so we'll try out a 0 to 60. We'll try out some sporty driving right now. And if you turn on the sounds, you definitely get a distinctive sound as you're driving this in sport mode. When you push on it, it's a very whooshing sound. I don't know if that adds to the experience or takes away from it, but it's something that you have. And it's funny turning it on and off and just hearing just how loud it is. But we are in sport mode. We've got our regenerative braking at its highest. We're going to go around a few curves. And that acceleration is pretty staggering. It feels very planted, very easy steering. I like this big steering wheel. Going around those corners, it's just, oh. And then as soon as you let off the accelerator pedal, that regenerative braking starts slowing you back down. That can be a lot of fun. Let's turn these sounds on again. All right, enough of the sounds. Let's head over to this closed back road and we'll do a quick 0 to 60 just for funsies. All right, again, 5.1 seconds is the target to beat. Dead stop, back, closed off road, sport mode, ready, set, go. Oh, holy crap. 60? That off the line is really crazy. Not a ton of drama after that, just rocket it forward. That instant torque is just crazy. And this is a quick one. And I've heard, obviously the N is coming out. I've heard with the Ioniq 5N, some people that have driven it say that if you thought that the regular Ioniq 5 was quick, which it is, the N is just mind-blowing. This thing in the N is also going to be just out of this world. What can I say? One of the big appeals for an electric vehicle is its driving charm. That instant torque brings out the kid in you, of course. Just a ton of fun. And that's not the end of it. There is still a lot of driving tech in this thing, a lot of the safety features like lane keeping assist, radar guided cruise control. You've got sensors all around here. You've got the surround view camera. So you got the parking assist features, the parking from the remote, just a ton of tech and safety features built into this thing that all work really well. The entire interior is pretty minimal. You've got these two big screens versus the one giant screen in something like a Tesla. You do have some physical buttons, so you're not reliant completely on screens. The interior is way more spacious than you would expect. At least it's more spacious than I expected. Even being a larger guy, I have plenty of room, very comfortable in these seats, plenty of headroom here, really comfortable driving position, heated seats. It's just an overall combination that I think is great. But of course, it all comes at a price. So let's go ahead and pull back over. We'll talk about the price, some of the competition, and I'll give you my final thoughts. Let's get into it. All right, so let's quickly talk about the price of this thing, some of its competition out there. Starting with the base price for the base SE trim rear-wheel drive is $42,450 here in the US. Is that with the tax credits? Does this thing even have tax credits? Not 100% sure. It kind of depends on, I think, your area exactly that you're buying it from. I plugged in my zip code and didn't see any extra incentives, but I also wasn't giving the website all of my info. So $42,450 for a base price. The limited starts out at $53,650, which if you think about it is only $10,000 more than the base, which isn't terrible. Of course, this does have an option. I think just the carpeted floor mats and then your destination charge brings the full MSRP at $55,000. So not cheap, but a decent price when you're talking about EVs. And I'll give you some of my final thoughts and which trim I would pick in just a minute. As far as competition goes, obviously the EV market is growing. There is some good competition out there. But when you're talking about sedans, this thing really competes with the Model 3. I think that's its biggest competitor. They even mention it on their website. This is a bit cheaper than the base Model 3, but not a ton cheaper. It's competitive in some areas and not in others. Now, I haven't driven a Model 3 before. I have been inside a Model S and I have been inside a Model X, but I have not driven a Model 3 and I haven't been inside a Model 3. I've seen, obviously, interior pictures. With that in mind, I do think that this is a great competitor, if not the clear winner. You can think what you will about Elon Musk and Tesla as a brand, but Hyundai is definitely one of the only manufacturers really competing with Tesla in the EV market here in the US. And even one of the times I stopped to charge this thing, there was a Ioniq 5 sitting next to me. When I've had other EVs and charged them, I always see an Ioniq sitting there charging. So even in my kind of suburb, rural part of Texas, when people have EVs, if it's not a Tesla, it's usually a Hyundai. Anyways, let's jump out and finish this thing up with some of my final thoughts. All right, so let's start wrapping this up, talking about kind of the EV world. I assume if you're watching this, you're kind of into EVs as it is, unless you're watching this for kind of hate content, in which case you kind of missed the boat making it this far, because I love this car and I'm really into EVs despite all the backlash that they get online. Unfortunately, I didn't get to spend the full week with this Ioniq 6. Normally when I get a car to review, I get it on a Tuesday, they pick it up on a Tuesday, and that gets me a full week of driving it on my normal day-to-day driving. This one I still got on a Tuesday and they're picking it up on a Tuesday, but Hyundai also flew me out to Tennessee where I drove the all-new Santa Fe. That first drive video should be out already. If you want to check it out, it was really good. But that means that the Ioniq 6 was sitting in my driveway for a few days, untouched. So I got a little bit less time driving it, which at the end of the week kind of makes me sad, because the time that I did get to spend in it, I really enjoyed it. I did spend some time at home charging it. After the first 2 days of driving, I did take it to a supercharger to charge it a bit, and I did charge it at one of the just level 2 slow chargers for a bit as well, kind of just getting a variety of the charging feel. Definitely the best way to go with EVs is having a 240 volt charger at home. Charging it overnight as you sleep, best way to go. I don't have that, so ours was the 120 trickle charge, which didn't get it a lot of charge overnight. And then the level 2 chargers that are close to my house are really slow charging and also take at least like 4 hours to get you to 100%. But again, at the end of the week, I'm a huge fan of the Ioniq 6. I also like the Ioniq 5. Both of them styled really nicely. I did get some insight during our trip to Tennessee with Hyundai when they were talking about the design of the Santa Fe. Another journalist brought up the fact that their lineup doesn't look alike. They don't really have a design language like pretty much every other brand, but that's kind of what Hyundai is going for, and they want to have different vehicles looking different, meeting different needs. And I think that's a good strategy, because if you want a retro cool hatchback looking EV, the Ioniq 5 is for you. If you want a sleek sedan, the Ioniq 6 is for you. So trying to put everything into a box is not what Hyundai is trying to do. And again, I didn't like this design when I first saw it online, but seeing it in person, being here, touching the sheet metal, I do like this style. I also really like the interior. Like I said, it is kind of a minimal yet very upscale looking interior, very techy interior, which you would kind of expect for an EV. And then the way that it drives is just fantastic. Has really good steering feel for an EV, has that great acceleration. It's a vehicle that's easy to recommend if you're already in the market for an EV. Now, could I convince somebody to get this over a Sonata? It really just depends on your average commute and what you're doing, where you live. It's obviously harder to live with an EV if you're living in like an apartment or a city setting where it's tough to charge it overnight. But if you're at all interested in EVs and the sound of owning a Tesla scares you, this is definitely an EV worth checking out. And if it was me personally, I would probably get the SE rear-wheel drive base. You're gonna be missing out on some features, yes. You're gonna be missing out on a little bit of the nicer interior, yes. But as I've always said with EVs, I think range is king, and that thing gets the best range out of the bunch. And I'm sure the power is still worth it. So just my 2 cents on that. With that, I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the Ioniq 6. Subscribe to the channel if you're into automotive reviews, especially EVs, because we do a lot of them here nowadays. Or if you're just into the gas, ICE vehicles, subscribe to the channel because we got a ton of those as well. You should also check out TXGARAGE.com, where we got a lot of written reviews as well as event news coverage over there from a lot of great authors, not just myself. Really worth checking out TXGARAGE.com. But with that, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for watching.